This is Steve Ridgel, and the other morning, my wife and I were doing our daily Bible reading. We're in First Samuel, and we were reading about Saul and Samuel. Samuel installing Saul as king, and Saul leading the people, and really in a rebellion. God Himself said, Samuel, they didn't reject you, they rejected me. And so there's a lot of stuff at play there, but we were reading an interesting story that reminded me of three dangers all Christian leaders need to be aware of. Anybody that would lead God's people. Saul illustrates perfectly three things we need to be careful about. So here's the background. Saul's going to go to war and defeat the enemy, and God's going to bless it. So Samuel says, I'll come, I'll do sacrifices, bless it, then you go fight the enemy, wipe out everything they have. Okay, so the day comes for the battle. Samuel's not there yet. Samuel's late in Saul's view. Samuel would probably say he was coming on God's time, but either way, Samuel's not there. So Saul goes ahead and does the blessing of the people. He takes the place of Samuel. First warning for leaders of God's people. Don't usurp spiritual authority. We're not God. I've seen a lot of preachers are bad about it in some ways. They come in and they say, here's what God wants. I see it clearly. I have it. I understand it. You've not got it right. Let me. And sometimes they tear up churches. I've seen elders do it. This is my church and I've got the right vision and I'm going to do. And they kind of put themselves in the place of God. Boy, be careful. God's people aren't ever ours. They're God's people. Churches I've served have never been Steve's people. I've been an elder, been a preacher. They never have been my people. And so I think all of us that want to lead in some way need to be really kind of, I get the whole, I love them, so they're mine. I get that. But we always need to remember they're God's. And if we're not careful, we can kind of play God on things. It's a real danger. Well, Samuel shows up and, Saul says, hey, I went ahead. You weren't here. We did this. And Samuel says, well, did you do everything I said? You wiped them out, right? And Saul says, oh, yeah, wiped out everybody. And Samuel goes, well, I think I hear some cattle and sheep over there. What's that noise I'm hearing? Oh, well, the very best we kept, but just because we were going to sacrifice. That's another real danger for all Christians, but especially leaders need to be careful. Wait, you're doing what? I thought God said. Oh, well, yeah, God said, but let me tell you what God meant. That's basically what Samuel's doing. Yeah, Saul's doing. Saul said, yeah, Samuel, you said wipe everything out. But we knew God wanted sacrifice and we wanted to demonstrate how we could kill the king in front of everybody. And, we know better than God how to do this. So God says this about marriage. Well, God didn't really mean that. What God meant was, God, you need to love God. And if you love God, you can do kind of whatever we decide you can do, because be careful saying God didn't really mean what He said, or God meant something He didn't say, or this is what God intended, or yeah, let me interpret for you what God means. Be real careful with that. Christian leaders, we ought to say, here's what God says. Let's figure out how to live that out. Because if not, you're coaching people to do a lot of things different than what God said, just like Saul was doing. And then finally, when it all comes down to it, Samuel chastises Saul and he says, you're right, I'm wrong. Take me back to the people, but go with me so the people won't know. Basically, protect my image for me. Okay, and they go back and Saul worships. I don't know if Saul genuinely repented and all that. Doesn't sound like it. Maybe Saul thinks, hey, it'll be okay if I kind of like we would say, hey, they went to church together, so it looked good. Maybe that's what Saul's doing. Sometimes when it's all falling apart and you get more concerned about your image than the people you're supposed to lead, then you've got a problem. Well, those are just reflections on watching Saul completely butcher his leadership of God's people. So, this is Steve Ridgel thinking, God, I'm going to try to do better as a leader of your people.